Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I asked you here today because I love my country, but I hate what it has become. There is a crack appearing in the middle of our land that I beg of you not to ignore. A crack that must be dealt with before it reaches the hard-won foundation of our security and our safety and that of our children. The real issue for me is the deeper problem is the murky alliance between business and politics. Let me be clear, I'm not making an attack on business in any way, on legitimate prosperity, even on those with experience in the commercial sector going into the House of Commons and the Lords to give their experience there. I'm talking about things like what I read in the Sunday Times last year in January. 4 Labour peers out of 10 asked agreed to take money in return for changing legislation. That's a frightening thing. You might have seen in the paper this week in the Telegraph, there was all the articles about the lobbyists. All the parliamentary candidates these days have lobbyists or PR. The business and Parliament get closer and closer, so we get forgotten. It's professional adultery. BAE, the arms contractor, their representatives in the House of Commons over 20 times last year, getting closer, getting cosy with our representatives. I remember watching a Channel 4 programme, the Channel 4 News. A Conservative Party parliamentary candidate walked in with her mum into the conference, and a couple of lobbyists came up and said, "We want to chat to you, is that all right? But get your mum away." And the mother looked into the camera and just said, "What's wrong with our country? Is that what politics is about? Just about cozying in with big business?" Where does this end? It ends in unhappiness and instability of the innocent in the general public. We're not programmed to serve 2 masters. Money cannot be their master. True democracy is when the people are the motivation of the Parliament. Why has this got to be fixed? I think that Thomas Jefferson said it right. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is democracy. The most dangerous side effect of this greed is the acceleration of distrust. Without trust, a man cannot have a strong relationship with his wife, or a business with its employees, or critically, a parliament with its land. Look at the CCTV cameras on our streets. What that says to me when things are going wrong in the middle of the country in Westminster is it's our fault, continually being scrutinised by the state. It's disgusting. And of course, the anti-terrorism legislation has become a reason to pry into our lives with the creation of a surveillance state, with this horrific and gruesome quango, wasteful quango, the Safeguarding Authority, which is going to stop us from taking our children to rugby practice or to a music lesson. This greed in Parliament has extended into a lust for the retention of power and control, so it becomes more difficult to choose between the parties. Politics has become about winning and not about serving. And in light of what happened in Europe this century, what Gordon Brown has been allowed to create should frighten us all. How easy it is for a nasty element to build on these foundations of aggressive state building and control. And the more power in Parliament, the more community is destroyed. Instability grows, festers, dangerous ideas prosper. There's a friend of mine who's helping on the campaign that summed up the BNP position, cut it to shreds, thankfully, that when they stand up and say, "We need to look after our own," those aren't the sort of people that are across the street to help a granny. They're saying things now like, "Oh, we'll look after your bins." They're trying to create a legitimate political platform. They've learnt that from this political expediency from the typical Tory or Labour candidate today that will come up to you and they will look at you in the eye and say what they think you want them to think. It's not honest. Edmund Burke said 200 years ago, he said, "You betray the confidence of the electorate if you're insincere. You betray their judgment in you." And that doesn't mean that a politician should not be informed on his or her views on legislation from those people. Of course you should be. But it's dishonest, this rubbish that exists today where there's a derelict hospital. The candidate will say to the person that wants it to be a hospital, "Yes, I think that should be a hospital." And 1 minute later, someone will be wanting it to be a school. It'll be, "Yes, I think that should be a school." It's dishonest, it's rubbish, it lacks backbone. 80% of the spending that councils do is provided by Westminster, by the paymasters at Westminster. Of course, in Wandsworth we benefit from brilliant council tax rates, but slowly our councils are being asked to become enforcers and not providers. But of course we've got to look back to look forward. We've got to look to those figures in the past that inspired us. I think about Winston Churchill, I think of Stephen Polyarkov, who's making a film at the moment, talks about the 3 or 4 Tory members of the House of Commons that just said, look, enough is enough, against a prevailing wind, against criticisms of opportunism and warmongering. You know, but now the problem is within. It's a serious problem. William Wilberforce is my own favourite, who lived not too far from here, and he legislated against greed. Slavery, that awful and terrible trade, had at its heart greed, and many in the House of Commons resisted Wilberforce because they were making money out of it, and that needed to be legislated as this greed needs to be legislated now. He presented a private member's bill. It took him 19 years. Martin Bell has stood up. He's done it for 4 years. It's protest. It's not. There's no time for protest now. It's got to be progress. We have to build a movement. Of course, there will be opposition. There will be defiant and ingenious opposition. Look what happened when The Guardian and Alan Rushbridger tried to take on Tesco, squashed like a fly, because they're going to love apathy and fear. They're going to love people not to want to stand up, because it's easier for them that way. I read a quote by the lawyer investigating the Wall Street crash, and he said that the bankers' stoutest allies were legal chicanery and pitch darkness. That's not a criticism of bankers today. My concern is Parliament. But it was interesting, you know, the kind of opposition, the Goliath that sits in the middle of the land. And there's great sadness for me is that we used to look up to politicians, and now they're just an object of derision, which is a sad thing. And so I'm asking you to, you know, join me in my struggle, to support me, to help legislate 2 things, to get elected as your independent MP in Battersea, to legislate against greed in Parliament, specifically members of the House of Commons and members of the House of Lords benefiting financially from canoodling up to big business, which basically critically does this thing which turns them away from the people, and that's why it's dangerous. All of us are greedy at times. I'm not trying to be some righteous twat saying that we aren't, you know, that we're not human. We are human, but that is not what's going on here. It's more sinister than that. And the other thing is to legislate for the rights and privileges that are being taken away from us in our community in Battersea. Thank you.